day dawned beautiful and clear once again in Zion, and we headed up the switchbacks to go over to the East Side Washes one more time for a morning of photography before heading to Kanab that afternoon. We were able to walk the washes and stay together pretty much and work on subjects together, which was nice. So I was able to use my large format while my friends used digital, and I didn't hold them up at all, and it was nice to photograph alongside my good friends. As we were leaving that area in the early afternoon, we ran across Justin Lowery. And I'd never met Justin before. He's another large format photographer here on YouTube, and I'll link to his information here. It was nice to meet him and get to spend some time talking to him and his friend Will, and they were photographing together for the week or so there in Zion. So after those conversations, we headed over to Kanab, but before we get into all that, let's take a look at the images I worked on in the morning of that day in the washes. Well, here's a case of one of those situations where you're more excited about it when you're there than once you're looking at the film later. This is all kind of a jumble now. It was all very exciting when you're standing there, but there's so much to this scene that it's hard to sort of narrow down and figure out what the subject really is. I like the curving branches and the structure of the yellow tree at the bottom, but there's really just no good way to include all the stuff at the top. And I probably should have just passed it by. I could have just centered on the structure of the yellow tree, but then it's just all yellow, and so that's probably not that exciting. So anyway, let's take a look at the next one. What I like about this one is the curving tree that's sort of nestled in the little cleft of the rock. Unfortunately, though, it all sort of just blends in, and it's hard to really separate that tree from the unfortunately gray rock that it's resting in. If there'd been more of a color contrast here, I think it would have been much more effective, although it's still pretty fun. Here's another example that I talked about in a previous video of the sort of dead tree or branch being nestled in the overtaking foliage as it's sort of decaying and going back to the earth. This is like the third one of these that presented itself to me on this trip, and I really like this one though, with the leaning angles and the branches curving in and out, and I like that little accent of yellow color at the bottom. So all in all, I think it's fun to have that same theme running through several of these images, and I was glad to have this one. Zion has so many places like this with flowing lines, and it's easy to find little alcoves where fall-colored leaves get nestled in, and it was fun to work on this one. It went really blue on the film, and so I had to work a bit in post to get this back to sort of normal-looking colors, although there is still a little bit of that warm, cool contrast, which is always really nice. I had worked on this subject many years ago, but didn't include the upper sandstone wall, just concentrating mostly on that dead snag. And I'm fortunate that that thing is still standing, and this time I was able to find it in the beautiful reflected light that just made that sandstone glow, so I was able to include all of that scene and a little bit of fall color to suggest the season, and this is a really nice setup, I think. I love this subject. It's just so typical of Zion, and it's nice to have this one. And finally, here are a couple of digital images made as we were driving the roads above the washes. Who can resist a nice backlit tree? And as long as you're able to control the glare off those leaves and keep them in the range of exposure, which I think I did, it's fun to have that leaning angle, those glowing pine needles, and then the little bit of fall color at the bottom. So I really like that one. And then we found this little emerging arch, or just arch shape, right along the road and the upper plateau. And I never noticed this one before, but it was very nicely set off with these sort of past peak fall colors. And I just like the shape and arrangement of it. And it's really just classic Zion. And it was a nice image to be able to work on right by the side of the road. That's one thing that is so nice about the Upper Plateau area in Zion. There's so many pull-outs, turnouts where you can stop the car, and there really are a lot of nice subjects that can be made. So if you can't get down in the washes or other areas, you can still do a lot of nice photography right from the road. So with that, it was time to move our base of operations over to Kanab, Utah, where the next day we plan to hike the Paria River, deep into the Paria Canyon, where we hope to find reflected light and nice reflections in the Paria River. We had done this hike together a few years ago and didn't have the best lighting conditions, but now it looks like it's going to be really clear, and so we're hoping for the beautiful reflected light and reflections in the river. So it's a really long hike and a really long day, but that's what's coming up next, so I look forward to seeing you on the next one.